Hey everyone, and welcome to the Pagan Perspective Mondays. My name is Patrick, and I'm going to be subbing for Annie today. The topic this week is all about parents, friends, and our path. So our first question comes from Quintanessa Pagan, and she writes, I'm very young, she's around the age of 15, and I'm a very devoted pagan, but my parents are not so supportive. How do I deal with this? Quintanessa, the first thing I want to bring up, and to anyone else watching this video and interested in this topic, is that you're very, very young. And I'm not saying that being interested in paganism is wrong when you're young, because I started off at the age of 15, really getting into it. But being that young and having parents that disagree with you can be very, very difficult, because we're finding something that we really find that's true to us, and that really, it sets off all the alarms in our head and saying, this is right, go for it. And then we have our parents telling us, you know, this isn't what we believe in, and they don't understand it. But when we're young and we're living under our parents' roof, we have to realize that our parents are very one-minded onto their beliefs, because that's the way that they were raised. Especially if your parents are Catholic, Christian, Jewish, they're going to see things differently. But that's how they were raised, and we have to really realize that. So, what you're saying is that they're not supportive. And by supportive, I feel that that's meaning not wanting to go out and buy you books, not understanding and not really taking you seriously. It's not like they're saying, hey, if you do this, we're going to kick you out. So there's kind of two sides to the situation. When we make the decision to change our spiritual path from our family's spiritual path, we need to be ready physically and emotionally to take on the criticism from our family and our friends. Anytime we make that decision in our life, just as if you were going to come out and say, hey, I'm going to dye my hair pink today, you have to be able to deal with the criticism that you're going to get from other people, aka your family, your friends, your school, your church, whatever those decisions are, you're going to have to be ready for them. So by being ready, it's really understanding everything about your craft. So when your parents come at you and say, well, this isn't a real religion because this and that, then you can come back to them and say, well, actually, this is a real religion, and this is what we believe, and this is what I believe. I think having the proper knowledge is something that we really need to focus on, especially when we're at the ages of 15 to 17. Those are the biggest developmental years in our teen years that we're really learning and blossoming into our full spirituality. And knowing is half the battle, as, you know, G.I. Joe would say, that we really have to understand what we're practicing. Because your parents aren't going to be supportive if you're just like, oh, I'm pagan, I have a couple witchcraft books. That's not going to register with them. So you need to understand, okay, this is an earth-based religion. I believe in the goddess and the god. What that means is that there's universal energy, and it's represented by the deities, and we don't worship the devil, and we don't do that thing. You really need to understand. Then you need to understand the terms, and I think what parents really appreciate is when you can say, well, Mom and Dad, it's not just paganism. I've studied, and I've looked at other religions too. I've looked at Christianity, and it doesn't flow with me. I've looked at Judaism, I've looked at being a Buddhist, and I've looked at all these other religions, and it's not right for me, and this is the first one that I found. And if we can do that and kind of show them that we are adults and we can make our own decision, then they're going to be a lot more supportive of that fact. Now, I'm not saying that your parents are going to be like, okay, yeah, practice in the living room and do whatever you want and set up your altar, but I think they will understand a little bit more. So coming at them in a more approachable way is what I would say, and really knowing. At the age of 15, you cannot be sure what your set devotions are, you know, because you're 15 and you're growing, and I remember being 15, and I also remember loving a band one day and then the next day hating it, and being into one sports team and then the next day hating it, and we're changing, we're constantly growing between these ages. So I'd say really, really know and understand what you're talking about before you go out and tell your parents. Okay, so the next question is from Dea Vera, and it's, how do I deal with losing people I love, like friends or family members, because they figure out about my path, or your path? Well, this is something that I have trouble explaining because I've never had to deal with a loss of family or really friends. I've had experiences where my friends necessarily didn't agree with me because they're on a different path than I am, but never anything major. We just really don't bring up our religious beliefs because we're still friends. But the first thing that I want to say is that if your friends or family members are going to leave you behind because of something that makes you feel whole and makes you feel better than anything you've ever felt in your life and enlightened and whatever your path makes you feel or your craft makes you feel, then clearly there's something not right with them. Either they're not your friends or your family is so lost in their own beliefs that they can't see past that. But I think something that you need to do when you really figure out your path, and that's why I like this question, because it's kind of, you've transformed from being a young kid now, and now you're an adult, and you're finally figured out your path. And your friends and family are going to start realizing when they see cauldrons or books or certain things laying around your house. I think that coming at them in a manner that's not down their throat, that's not in their face, you know, just coming to them and maybe if they have a question, answering it for them in the proper manner. But I think dealing with losing them is something that's always going to be really difficult. And I actually have a story. I'm not going to name names or anything, but I have a friend who's recently dealing with a very troubling situation in her marriage, and she spiritually is on a different path than her husband, and she is on a different path than she was a year or two ago. And she's really grown as a person. Being on this particular path, which is more on the lines of being like Christo-pagan, has opened her eyes to a whole bunch of new things. She loves herself more. She's a lot healthier mentally and physically, and she's going out and doing more things and trying new things, and she really is more stable than she's been in the past 2 years. But her husband is not willing to accept that. He does not see it that way. He sees it as, you know, you're rejecting God, you are going to hell, you need to be saved. And dealing with that is tough, and it is emotionally draining, and it is probably one of the worst things that you're going to deal with in your life. But we have to know that when we choose our spiritual path, when we know what makes us enlightened and what makes us happy, is that there are going to be people who don't see it our way. And there will come a time that you will either lose people or be discriminated against for your beliefs. And that's something that we have to, as people, make that decision in our head. Are we willing to do this? Just like when you decide, with the hair reference, if you decide to change your whole wardrobe one day and go to work with pink hair, you're going to have to deal with the consequences. So I think a way of doing it is with friends, is saying, you know what, if you can't accept me for who I am as a person and what I love, just like I've accepted you for who you are, then we are truly not friends. And if they can't accept that, then I think they're just kind of, you could just have to let them go. When it comes to family or spouses, it can be a lot more difficult. And I would recommend, before getting into a serious relationship or before making any serious decisions, really figuring out who you are on the inside. What do you believe? What are your beliefs and views on life, so that your partner can maybe not reflect all of those things, but understand it a little bit better and have more time to take it in. When it comes to family members leaving you behind, sisters, aunts, even moms and dads, grandmas, grandpas, the thing that we need to remember is that they're our parents and they love us, they're our family and they love us, and we love them, but sometimes we have different views. And one thing that I've said to my friend who is dealing with that situation with losing a brother to, he's very, very religious, and she's on a different path. And I said, you know what, I love my brothers and I love my sisters, but if I were to see them on the street and we weren't brother and sister, oh hell no, I wouldn't be friends with them. We have nothing in common. So we just kind of have to take it like we're all humans, and yes, we were born together as family members, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're meant to be best friends, and we're meant to be people who are together, and it sucks, but sometimes we have to deal with that. I don't deal with it with my spiritual side, but I do deal with it with other sides of my life, where I have family members who I really don't get along with as well as I would like, and who's kind of, you know, we've taken our separate paths and we've gone our separate ways, and it hurts at first, but I think with time and with really understanding and enlightening ourselves, we can overcome that. And I think that in time, your family, if you outreach them, if you never stop loving them, if you never stop caring for them, I feel that they will come around, at least at some point in their life. Another thing that I want to touch on is, don't regret holding things in and holding things back. I've had people come to me and say, you know, my grandmother died before I could tell her who I am, and that's not just being pagan, but that's also sexuality or anything like that, and it kills me inside every single day. And I think that we need to, at least when we know ourselves and know who we really are, is let the people that we love know, and do it with open arms, and hopefully our parents and our loved ones will respond with open arms. But when they don't, we just have to realize that they don't understand that side of it. They were raised a different way, they were taught a different way, and they're not so open-minded. One thing of advice, if you are dealing with this and going through it and you're having a hard time, I would recommend seeking out someone, whether they be in your community, a coven member or a coven leader, a priest or priestess, or just a counselor. Go and see them and talk to them, because those emotions and those feelings they're not just gonna go away, they're not gonna stop, and we are hurting inside sometimes. And I've dealt with it with my sexuality, with hurting inside, and although we can kind of breathe deep and take it in, sometimes we do need outside help. We need someone to talk to. So, awesome questions, guys, and like I said, I am sorry that Annie couldn't be here today, but I hope I did a good job for being the first person of the week. Love and light, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.